Welcome to another thrilling art lesson episode where Miss Hagen, that's me, is going to teach you something artistic. Today's episode, Miss Hagen presents Printmaking, Part 1, Carving. You'll know what that is soon enough if you don't already know. But what really is printmaking? Printmaking is a method to make art multiple times. So making something over and over, like a stamp. It's pretty much like making a stamp. But there are different kinds of printmaking, like screen print, and you use a screen and you pull things. But we're going to focus on linoleum rubber stamp printmaking. The basic tools you need to really get started are only a linoleum rubber stamp block. This one is a 4x6 inch stamp, and then a carving tool. This carving tool has a lot of goodies on the back end, so if I spill them out, they're really nice. I don't know why my hands are so dirty. I'm going to put that one back in here. So here we have the tiniest one. This is for a very tiny detail you can carve with. Whoops. Put that to the side, tiny. And then there is this U shape. This is really good for carving bigger sections. There is a U-ish V. That's another good for carving good sections. And this is a deeper V. That's not as small as the small, but this is probably the one I use the most to get detail. And then there's a slice and dice tool. I don't really use this blade for much, but I guess you could use it to cut off like corners and stuff. Now is the time to decide what you're going to actually create a stamp into. What image do you want? Now you can create your own image, but we've been talking about pop art and appropriating images that aren't yours. So I gladly took this image that wasn't mine from the internet. It kind of reminds me of Roy Lichtenstein's paintings and comic paintings of the crying girl. I took this image and I traced it on some paper. This is the second step. I decided what is going to be black and what is going to be white. So a stamp, one layer, can only be pure black and have a background or whatever color you're using. So there's two colors, black and white. After I decided on what's going to be black and white, I went to trace the image on tracing paper. This really helps with transferring it to the stamp. So I took my image and I traced it with tracing paper. From my tracing paper, I can transfer it to my stamp by flipping it over and taking a pencil and rubbing off the graphite. So if I rub pretty hard all over, it will transfer my stamp. If the lines aren't perfect, you can always go back with a pencil and darken them in to get a little bit better lines. And I did that a little bit. But for the most part, I can see what I'm going to carve and not going to carve on my stamp. It looks pretty good. Yeah. If you notice, it is backwards. The stamp will be backwards at first, but when you stamp it, it'll become the right side again. For example, too, I made this stamp last year, and it says Pizza Cow, but it's written backwards on the stamp. That's what tracing paper helps with, is you can write it the correct way. So I wrote this facing the right way, and when I put it down on the stamp, it transferred to be backwards. But when I stamp it, it will be right side again. The biggest mistake I see is people drawing right on the stamp to carve, and they'll have words that are facing the correct way, but when they stamp it, it becomes backwards. And then you have a backwards word stamp. We don't want that. Alright, so carving. I want this to look like this. And my black parts I will not carve, and my white parts I will carve. So I'll keep this as a reference to know what I'm carving, and I'm going to start carving my lady here who is crying. I am going to start with my V shape that I have here, this like deeper V, to get some outlines and details right away. And then I will move on probably to the U shape to get the big chunks out. When you start carving, you want to make sure you never face your hands, you want to hold the block with one hand and carve away from the rest of your fingers. These are pretty sharp, so you don't want to cut yourself. But if I'm starting, I want to start from somewhere and move the block instead of my actual hand. Like I'm moving my hand a little bit, but notice how I'm moving the block with the carving tool too. So I know I'm carving out this area. So there we go. Get that little thing there. You also don't want to gouge into your carving. It doesn't have to be very deep, but also if you just like stab at it and chunk things out, these are not very thick, so you might end up breaking or ripping this. You don't want to do that either. Okay, I pretty much carved all of the outlines of where I need to be carving out of. One of the biggest design mistakes I see first time stamp carvers do is just do the outline and then they'll stamp the whole thing. So I have all these edges carved, but if I were to stamp it, it would have way too much black space. There's not enough light to dark ratio in it. So I've carved out the outline, and now I'm going to carve out these big white spaces too. Okay, I got my bigger U shape here, and I can now do larger sections. Okay, another tip is if you do screw up, that's okay. You can't really add more in if you accidentally carve a spot you're not supposed to, but just go with it. Sometimes the best looking things are just not perfect. You don't have to be perfect. Mistakes are fun to look at. Okay, right now I have pretty much completed the big white areas and the dark areas. I know her hair is staying dark, her eyebrows, her lipstick, whatever this line is. So it'll look pretty similar to this. But one thing that I would like to do, which I would encourage other people to do, is add some kind of texture somewhere. So her hair right now is just going to be a big block of black. Okay, I'm going to get a sharper V. I have my sharper V, and I'm going to add some detail, some nice texture into the hair. So I'll scoop out some lines, just do some like shaped lines of hair. Because why not? I'll follow some of these lines. It'll be pretty nice looking. Her hair kind of swoops up. Each of these lines are giving like highlights to her hair too. This will be much more interesting than just one big black block of hair. Okay, I believe I am complete. I have finished. I have carved everything I needed to carve out. I don't know if it's perfect yet because I need to do a test print first, and if there's any bits and pieces that are still sticking out, I can carve them back out after I test it. But this is it for learning how to carve a stamp. Next time we will learn how to make a background, because there's a specific way I want to make backgrounds for this, and then we will learn printing. So I hope you enjoyed watching me carve a block of rubber, and I hope you go and carve your own blocks of rubber for stamping. It's pretty fun. That's all. If you are interested in it too, there's this awesome book you can buy probably at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, whatever, but Block Print. It has a lot of really good examples and how-tos in picture form. So it's a really nice book. I would recommend it. Of course, the first thing I do is spill on my artwork right here. This is why you shouldn't drink and do art at the same time. This is why I can't have nice things.